Hello and welcome to an essay plan that is going to compare the Emigre with extract from the Prelude. This video will show you how to compare the two poems effectively. There's lots of videos that will do a really good job of analysing each poem in isolation, which is important, but that is only step one. Step two is to compare the two poems, which means to write about their similarities and their differences. That is what the examiner wants. So this video will go through a number of points for a number of separate paragraphs, give you evidence to back each of these up, and importantly, link back to the keyword in the question. If the paragraphs don't link back to the keyword in the question, then the question is not being answered. If the question is not being answered, you're not going to get the marks. Okay, so you're in the exam, you've opened up the exam paper, and the question at the top is what you are faced with. How is the power of humankind against one's surroundings portrayed in the Emigre and one other poem? Now, because the Emigre and extract from the Prelude are both poems about moving from one state to another due to strong emotional reactions with one's surroundings, I can imagine comparing both of them together. Some of these points you might gel with, some you might not, some you might combine with each other. Hope that they are of use somehow. So what would I say? Well, point number one, in both poems, a sense of the place being a living force that can profoundly affect them in different ways is presented. This is a powerful thing, surely. How is this presented in the Emigre? Well, in a very positive and indeed quite affectionate way. The city in the Emigre is personified as a force, almost as if it is some sort of distant lover from the past. We hear how it comes to the poet and will lie down in front of the poet, and she will stroke its hair and comb its hair, I should say, in line 20, and love its shining eyes. There is language there that you can annotate in each one. The use of the verb comb suggests slow, delicate handling of the hair of the city, as it were. Obviously, the use of the verb love can be analysed, but also surely the use of the adjective shining can suggest positive, gentle, affectionate interactions, as it were, with the face of a city. Even better than that, in line 21, we hear how my city takes me dancing through the city of walls. So, okay, we're in the new city now, the city of walls, but the use of the verb dancing implies that the city is somehow taking them away on a rather romantic journey that is full of energy, full of life, and therefore a positive interaction. This is, of course, completely different to the personification of the mountain peak in the Prelude, which is far more sinister, far more unloving, and far less pleasant. It all comes about in the second part of the poem, from around about line 23, I should say, when we hear, as if with voluntary power instinct, it upreared its head. So the use of the adjective voluntary suggests that this peak can rise and fall as and when it so desires. The fact that it upreared its head, the use of the verb upreared, implies a quick, slightly violent, jerking motion upwards, surely designed to try and intimidate the person. We see this in line 26, the use of the verb towered up between us implies, with the use of the verb towered, that it is an enormous entity that is designed to try and really terrify the protagonist as he rows through the lake, rows along the lake. And then the fact, of course, line 29, the fact that it strode after me, the use of the verb strode implies an effortless but very large, quick, sustained, steady momentum as it quickly and methodically advances towards the rower. So effectively, everybody, this is a paragraph where I've noticed that there is personification in both of them. And what am I trying to do? I'm trying to combine them both contrast them both and say how in the Emigre the personification is surely very much like a loved person from the past, quite unlike the personification in the extract from the Prelude, where the mountain is personified as a sinister, unpleasant force that is very much unlike a loving person. Point number 2, both poems use imagery relating to bright light that conveys a strong affection for the past, although there is a sense of conflict that is evident in both. This, I hope, is a really good point, combining two semi-related, semi-different areas that I hope combine quite powerfully with each other. The idea of bright light in the past, but there is now a sense of conflict where we are now. So what's my evidence for this? Well, ultimately it's the use of the adjectives glittering and sparkling in line 9 and line 11 of extract from the Prelude. Clearly, if something glitters or if something sparkles, it is attractive, or it has connotations of value. These adjectives connoting bright light suggest that there is something high value, that is very precious to them, that they're strongly identifying with. But I'm also suggesting the idea of sparkling perhaps has slight connotations of distraction, or indeed of deceit. Something that sparkles is meant to slightly hypnotise and distract you. So whilst generally speaking, overall, these words have connotations that are positive, there is a slight subtle undercurrent of ever such slight negativity with each one. And we see a similar sort of strong affection for the past with the structural thread of sunlight that runs all the way through the Emigre. It concludes every single paragraph, every single stanza that we have in the Emigre. We hear at the end of stanza 1 that they were branded by an impression of sunlight. End of stanza 2, they can taste sunlight. End of stanza 3, they can see evidence of the sunlight. So this is fantastic stuff. The old city is associated all the way through the poem with sunlight, and it combines with 3 of the 5 senses as if it's very much integrated into the fibre of her being. She, as a living human being, can only closely associate what it is that makes her a living human being with images of sunlight, which are associated with the city. But we also hear everybody in line 8 that I'm branded by an impression of sunlight. Clearly, branded is a very painful, unpleasant verb that has connotations of torture. In line 16, the fact that I can't get it off my tongue, it tastes of sunlight. On one hand, that's great. It's combining taste, one of the 5 senses, with sunlight. Who she is closely related with light, but the fact that I can't get it off my tongue, that monosyllabic delivery, rather implies a slight sense of irritation, you may argue. And we always have a bitter aftertaste of something that we might sort of have eaten, but we don't necessarily like. And indeed, we see that at the end. It's fantastic that she can see the sunlight. But let me rephrase that, line 30, my shadow falls as evidence of sunlight. The reference to the shadow, a slightly menacing force that stalks you, that haunts you, that you can't escape, is complementing this idea of the fact that she can see the sunlight. So where I'm going with all of that, everybody, is, I hope, quite a good paragraph there, that the power of humankind against one's surroundings is associated with bright light, that generally speaking is a positive complement to each poem, but there is that slight sense of conflict that is still evident in both. And finally, everybody, what looks like quite a simple point to make, but I think is one that we can still make a little bit more complex to impress the examiner, is to return to the idea of structure. In extract from the Prelude, we have the extract is written in blank verse. And so what is blank verse? That's poetry written in unrhymed but metered lines, almost always iambic pentameter. So to some extent, the fact that it is unrhymed, the fact that it is not restricted by a rhyme scheme, the fact that it has enjambment running through it, all implies a sense of a free-flowing, easy-going, non-restrictive, slightly relaxed, slightly related to stream of consciousness presentation to it. But the fact that it has iambic pentameter, just like, for example, My Last Duchess, implies a heartbeat. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. One summer evening led by her I found. This heartbeat rhythm, as it were, you can always say a really clever thing about iambic pentameter, that number one, it reminds you of a heartbeat, and therefore it reminds you perhaps of passion, it reminds you of being alive. Unfortunately, it therefore reminds us that this passion, this sense of being alive, or this state of being alive, will one day, I'm sorry to say, come to an end. And as we get towards the end of the poem, everybody, from around about line 32 onwards, we get lots of caesuras. And it won't necessarily come across particularly well when I read it, but if I just read, for example, line 34, and serious mood, but after I had seen that spectacle for many days, my brain. Others, line 39, or blank desertion, no familiar shapes remained, no pleasant images of trees, of sea or sky, no colours of green fields. It sounds a bit bizarre when I read it out, but hopefully you get the point of what I'm trying to come across here with everybody. This poem has iambic pentameter, but the caesuras towards the end, when he is at his most traumatized, disrupt the iambic pentameter. They stop the rhythm that is meant to sound like a heartbeat. They therefore disrupt and stop the relaxed sense of something that is natural and something that will carry on going. And that, I think, is a good point to make. The caesuras towards the end of Extract from the Prelude disrupt the free-flowing iambic pentameter that blank verse poetry will have. I think you can make a similarly powerful point, everybody, with the end of the Emigre. The Emigre is not blank verse, but also, like Extract from the Prelude, it does not have a rhyme scheme. It has free-flowing enjambment. All of this has connotations of nostalgia, of, as it were, daydreaming, of reminiscence. But just like Extract from the Prelude, everybody, it has this disruptive sense towards the end because of the caesuras. And towards the end, we hear of the more sinister City of Walls, where they accuse me of absence, they circle me, my city hides behind me, they mutter death. So again, you can really very cleverly, I think, compare this with Extract from the Prelude, where the caesuras towards the end, when she becomes at her most traumatized, disrupt the free-flowing enjambment in the same way that the iambic pentameter of the Extract from the Prelude is disrupted. And of course, everybody, it's not written on the slide here, but please do combine that with analysis of language. So you've got lots of unpleasant language towards the end of Extract from the Prelude that you can analyse. Line 39, the use of the adjective blank in blank desertion. The repetition of the word no that runs through it. The final line, the idea of a trouble to my dreams, the use of the adjective trouble, or I should say, abstract noun, trouble, which is rather unpleasantly juxtaposed with the slightly purer, nicer abstract noun dreams. You could analyse that in the same paragraph, and you could analyse again the slightly more unpleasant language towards the end of the Emigre. The unpleasant verb accuse, the idea of how they circle me, the use of the verb, in this case, circle, they circle me as a verb in this case, implies that there is a predatory feel, just as the caesuras are disrupting the flow of the poem. So still lots and lots and lots and lots of words and language that you can analyse in this paragraph that perhaps more explicitly focuses on structure. So that, I think, everybody, is a really clever, good thing to say about structure. I hope you might agree. I hope that's all been of use. Bye for now.